Okay, all right, so that recording is started, and let me go ahead and just let a couple more folks back in. All right, so yes, again, thank you for joining me, and thank you for keeping your mics muted and answering or asking those questions in the chat box when you have those questions. We'll make every effort, like I said earlier, to get those questions answered, um, and let's go ahead and get started. So what I'd like to do is let's just quickly talk about what we're going to be focusing on today. As you can see on my screen, we're going to focus primarily on working with funds and contributions in PDS. Now, what you're going to see as we get into the process, we're going to focus on setting up a new fund, like a capital campaign fund. And we're going to go ahead and create a Windows campaign. We're going to show what it looks like to enter pledges and donations to that campaign. We'll talk about how to handle non-parishioners who pledge and donate. Also, initial payments. We call those, sometimes they're called down payments. Sometimes it's treated as a payment that comes in at the same time that a pledge comes in. So a couple different ways that we can handle that. We'll talk about those. I also have a note down below that funds 1, 9, and 50 those are standardized funds that should be in all of your church office programs right now. So every parish should have those funds. Now, what you can do, if you want, you can create any fund 2 through 8 as needed. So if you need to create, for example, a Windows campaign fund, you can go ahead and use funds 2 through 8 to do that. In my example, I think I have fund 5 that's available, so I'll be using that as an example. A couple folks are still joining in. Let me get those folks in, and let's take a look at our program. I'm also going to turn off my camera, and I'll turn it back on right before we wrap it up. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to church office. And again, as far as the campaign goes, we're going to create a new one. Now, in order to get to our fund setup screen, what we need to do is we need to have enough access to get into the funds setup screen. Notice I'm sitting on the home screen. When I go to administration, fund setup is where that lives. Now, not everybody has access to the fund setup screen. And if you are a non-administrator that needs to set up a fund, you'll need to speak with the administrator of the church office program to give you that access. Now, once you have the access, you're going to go into administration and you're going to click on the fund setup screen. Now, it's important also to point out that even though we're not really entering anything just yet, we're just building out a fund, it's not a bad idea to make a backup of your data before you do any of these steps. So recap, remember file, go to backup data, okay? Backup your data, it should take just a couple minutes, and now you have a snapshot before you've gone into the fund setup process. Now, I believe in mine, I'm going to go ahead and make that backup right now, only because there are certain processes that it's going to request that I make a backup, or it's going to keep reminding me. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a backup data right now. And I can give it a name. Call it before Fund 5 setup. You can name it whatever you want, as long as it makes sense in case you ever have to go back to it. We'll go ahead and let that backup continue on. And just real quick, I'm going to check to see if there's any questions. No questions so far, so we'll go ahead and let that back up, and then we'll jump right back into our process. Okay. So while that's backing up, again, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up a capital campaign, and we're going to be calling it the Windows Campaign Fund. Okay, you can call it whatever makes sense to you. I'm going to just call it Windows Campaign. And then we're going to make sure that we're setting up the proper, what are called groups, activities, and functions of those activities to be able to manage the daily work of that fund. All right, let's go back over to church. It looks like it's done. We can hit close, and now we're back. All right, so back to our administration tab, over to fund setup. Now, before we get started, and we need to identify what funds are available to us. Probably the easiest way to identify what funds are available is by clicking on your search box up on top and then click on the drop down. So real easy, you're going to be able to see all the funds in your system. My data is shared with Formation, so I can see those Formation funds as well. But I can clearly see that I do have Fund 5 available, and it's within my Funds 2 through 8 options. So Fund 5 is what I'm going to use. Now, we have a number of different funds. It's also a good idea to make sure that we don't have a Windows campaign fund already. Because if we do, it might be a better option to just continue with that fund. So we want to keep those options open. In our case here, we're going to create a brand new one. All right, so Fund 5 is what we're going to do. I'm just going to click out of that screen. Now, I can be on any screen at this point on the fund setup. I just need to click on Add Fund to get me to where I need to be on my next step. Now, the first question it's going to ask is, do you want to use the Add Fund Assistant? Okay. Now, we can use the Add Fund Assistant. It's going to ask us a bunch of questions about what we're building and then kind of step us through the process. Now, for this first round, I'm going to say no because I want to show you what it looks like to build out a new fund and then just focusing on the activities that we want to bring over. So I'm going to say no, we're not going to use the fund assistant, and it's going to take us right to a blank fund screen. Now remember, Fund 5 was going to be the one that we wanted to use, so I'm going to go and enter 5 right here, and then hit my tab button to take me to the next field. Now we need to give it a name. We're going to call it Window. Window Campaign Fund, okay? I'm going to hit tab to take us to the next field. Now, the next question is asking us, for those cases where families pledge quarterly, semi-annual, or annual, when do we want those due dates for their pledges to be due? We use the terms due and payments, but we know that these are donations that are coming in and pledges. This terminology does kind of come from the fact that we manage tuition for formation programs. We used to have a school program, so those terms came from those programs, and they're pretty much synonymous when it comes to setting up these funds. All right, so let's go ahead and click on the down arrow to see what our options are for when these are due. Now, you may not even offer the option to pledge quarterly, annual, or semi-annual. So the best option here to choose is going to be billing period. What that's going to do is that's going to determine when someone pledges, their amounts due are going to be based on their pledge period. I myself might only choose to pledge from, let's just say, May 1st through the end of the year. So then this would say that my first amount due would be May 1st. If I chose fund period, it's going to take the starting date over here on my fund period that I set up. Okay. I spelled window. I sure did. Thank you for pointing that out. I will be the first to admit that I am not the best speller. So let me go ahead and fix that. Thank you. All right, moving on. So we set that to billing period. And now the next question is recurring charges are due when? All right, so the first day of the billing period, that's what we want. But we do have some other options like last day of the 15th of the month. First day of the billing period is going to be what we are choosing today. Now you'll see an option here to increase pledge to match payments just underneath. When I check this box, what it's doing is it's saying if I post a payment from a family just using the payment activity, and there is no pledge that's attached or tied to that family for the window campaign, then the program with this checkbox or this box check can calculate a pledge for me. That becomes helpful for when I'm looking at the recap screen. Family calls me up and asks me, how am I doing on my window campaign pledge? Am I up to date? What's my balance? That's going to help you speak to that donor in a clear way, because it's going to give you, it's going to automatically calculate the pledge, and then which will then give you a proper balance. So pledge minus paid equals your balance, and it's going to do that for you with this little checkbox. Now, you want to always make sure that you create a pledge for your payments. Anytime you have a payment come in, you want to pledge that amount, and we'll talk about that during the posting process. All right, so we're going to use our tab button just to keep tabbing through our fields here. And the next place it takes me is to my year. Now, when we're creating a fund period, the year should always be whatever the year that fund period starts. So right now we're in 2024. We're going to be creating this for, we'll go ahead and start it for May 1st, 2024. And we're going to give it an end date of May, how about April, the end of April 2025, a full 12 months. So because it starts in the year 24, we're going to give it the year 24. I'm going to tab over and I'm going to give it a starting date. So my starting date is going to be 05/2024, and automatically put 2024 in because of my year. For ending, it's going to be 04/2025. Now, if I have a goal in place, I can go ahead and put that goal in now. Okay, $1 million. Now you can adjust that goal, as needed, but it's always good to have a goal to start with. That's going to allow you to run analysis reports later on to see how you're doing. How am I doing 6 months down the road in my fund based on all the pledges and payments that are coming in? All right. Now, when I hit tab, it's going to take you to the next field. Obviously, we're not going to create another year. We are done. Now, if we choose to extend this next year, when at the end of April 2025, we can easily do that and create an additional period for the new pledges. We can also extend the ending period, okay? So we're not limited to just creating a new fund period for every year. If we continue on and we know that maybe this can be going on for 5 years, we can easily extend the ending period. That's not going to affect anybody's billing period that we've set up through our pledge entry process. It's just going to open up that fund to accept future pledges from new donors that are coming in after 4/25, or current donors that are making additional pledges on the same fund. They fulfilled their first pledge and then they're starting again. So you have options for how you want to address those. Okay, so here's where we are. I'm going to hit the tab button again. And now it's going to ask me, do I want to insert one of the predefined groups of activities, or do I want to make my own group? Now, if I click predefined group, I'm going to go ahead and click on predefined group so you can see what that looks like. So the first group that it shows me is church contributions. Now, church contributions has a number of different group names and activities and functions that you might see in a typical church contribution fund. If I click on the drop down, you'll see that we have church contributions with extra contributions. Okay, that's these extra ones down below. Okay, click on the drop down, you'll see that we have stewardship, school tuition, formation, pledge drive, extra contributions. Here's pledge drive. So pledge drive has a main group and activities. It even has volunteer service hours and miscellaneous activities. Now, there is a benefit of choosing one of the predefined groups, and that what it's doing is it's ensuring that you are including the maximum amount of activities and functions in their proper order, so that you can start to use the fund and it's going to function for you properly. It's very easy to create a fund in leave out, a activity or a function and it not calculate information for you properly. But if we spend a little bit of time looking at this pledge drive, see how we've got our pledge payment group, we have an activity group, and we have a function group for pledge payments. Notice that each activity, the first one is the charge. Okay. Now that's going to be the pledge. So when somebody pledges, we're going to attach that pledge to a charge activity. When payments come in, we're going to attach those to payment activities. You have initial payments coming in. This one also has things like deposits, payments to reduce rate. So it may have more than what you need, but it's going to contain at least the bare minimum that you need. So what I'm going to show you here is how to take that pledge drive and just bring in the types of activities and their functions that are going to be required for the window campaign. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start at the top. And let's just kind of look down here. So we've got charge. We've got two payments, an initial payment and a payment pledge. We're not going to need a deposit, so I'm going to uncheck that one. We're not going to need a payment to reduce rate. We're going to keep the non-cash donation. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and continue on with our unchecking of volunteer credits. We're not going to do any quid pro quo activities, but you can. If you think that you're going to have any of these types of activities for your campaign, just leave them in. Now, it's going to bring them in with these names, and all you need to do is just edit the names once we brought them in. We want to keep the pledge balance because that's going to calculate for us on our reports. Moving on down. Volunteer service hours, we're not going to be doing those, so we can uncheck the entire group for that one, and it'll uncheck those. Miscellaneous activities, I know you see stained glass here, but we're going to go ahead and uncheck that. We're going to rename our activities once everything's brought into the fund. Okay, so we're done. We've selected all the different group names and activities that we're going to be needing for our purpose. If there's anything else that we need to add, we can always add it once we've brought in our initial set. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and click on Use OK, and it's going to bring in just the group and activities and the functions that we chose. So technically right now, if I hit save, this is I can post to it and I can start to work with it. But what we want to do is we want to make a few adjustments here to the group names and activities. All right, so here's our pledge payment. So here we can just call this one. We can just call it window campaign. Now where that's going to become visible is on internal reports when we run those to see how the fund's doing. External, like statements, reminders that go out, those can just display the group name of window campaign, total paid, balance, and just display the name window campaign. We also have control when running reports to also display the activity names. So that's why we also want to make sure that we're assigning activity names that make sense. So let me go ahead and take a quick look here under activity name. So we have pledge payment due. Now, again, remember, since it's possible for these activities to appear on statements or reminders, it's a good idea to make these as user-friendly as possible. So instead of pledge payment due, how about we call this window pledge? Okay, very simple. So this is what would be displayed if we chose to include that activity name on any communication that goes out. We don't want to change the function. We want to keep it as a charge. And then down, next one down, window payment. we'll keep this one here. We'll call this one window initial payment. So non-cash. Now, a non-cash donation can be something like materials, anything that's not money that's given to you can be considered a non-cash. So if that's the case where non-cash is donated, then that can be posted with a Windows non-cash donation. And then you have an opportunity to also put a description on the posting of what that item or thing is. Okay. So that's coming in as a Windows non-cash contribution. Now, this one actually has a deductible function on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the drop down here. Actually, what I'm going to do is just double check to make sure that I am answering Sarah's question properly. Address the topic of setting up a non-tax deductible fund and getting them to appear on a separate page. Okay, so we've got two different ideas here. So non-cash deductible will appear on the second page of the donor substantiation letter, that end of your tax letter. Non-deductible items typically do not appear on the tax statement because the fact that they're non-deductible. So I'm going to keep this Windows non-cash in here for the purpose of it leaving or staying and appearing on our end of year letter. The last one is going to be the window pledge balance. I'm going to take the word pledge out. We'll just call it window balance. All right. Hit save. Now, when I hit save, it's going to tell me a warning that it's a new fund. So none of the other users that are set up and have access to Church Office have access to this fund yet. So I'm going to have to, if I'm the administrator, give the proper folks access to the fund so that they can work with it, or ask the administrator to do that task. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now the fund's set up. Now, what that messaging that I just read off to you, where that gets applied, is under users and passwords. I'm going to go and click on users and passwords, and I'm going to find an individual. Let's see. Do we have any other individuals? We don't. So let's just pretend that there's another person out there. We'll just call them Church Office user. Okay. And I'm going to hit save. All right, so now this Church Office user only has no access to anything. All right, so let's go ahead and just say that they have view-only access to pretty much everything. Let's hit save. And now look over on individual fund access. And you can see all the different funds that are set up in the program. Well, since this was a new user, they don't have access to any of them. But here, Fund 5 is my window campaign. If they need to be able to work and do things like run reports, just look at the data, I can give them view-only access, and they're going to get that to Fund 5. They can run reports, they can look at the fund. They can't post to it, they can't do any work beyond looking at it and running reports. All access will give them the ability to go into the fund setup screen, make changes to that fund, as well as running reports and posting to that fund. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on save. And where I might need to go into is back to my additional my access and privileges and doing things like family postings. Actually, that's going to be contributions right here. So under contributions, give them the proper access to the funds under contributions. I'm going to go ahead and just click on all here to mark those. Postings. Okay, kind of get the idea. We need to just kind of open up that security so that they can work with the fund. Okay. Now they might not need all of these. Some of these are, administrative tasks, but you kind of get the idea. We just have to make sure that we're giving them the proper access. Now, when church office user next logs in, they'll be able to work with that fund. I'm going to stay in my login for the remainder of the session here. All right, so let's go back over to our fund. Go back to fund setup, back to fund 5. Now when I click on my drop down, I can easily just choose it from the drop down. Now at this point, like I said, it's all ready to go. We can go ahead and start to post to the fund. If I needed to, or if I wanted to, I do have the ability to create a template for this fund. Maybe I might need to create a very similar fund in the future. I can export the fund setup to a file, save it. It's a text file. It's going to default to your data folder. So when you create that file, and let's say down the road you want to create another campaign fund that has the similar activities and functions, you can import using the import to bring that template in and then adjust the year, adjust the activity names, and anything else that needs to be adjusted for that fund setup. Okay? So that's the export and the import process. Now, another thing that you can also do once your fund is along the way, you can run usage reports. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, like how do you want to build the report? You can choose to print all the families using a specific activity, one of these. You can choose the second option to print all activities with a number or count of families that are using each of those activities. Okay, that becomes helpful for you to see, how many families are actively participating in the fund with those usage reports. All right, I'm going to click on cancel here. All right, so let's talk about posting pledges and payments. If I take my mouse and I'm just going to go back to the home screen, so let's kind of reset for where we are. Let's close that. So on the home screen, where I want to go is to processes. Processes is going to take me to families, members. We want contribution processes. Click on contributions. Now you'll see that we have fund quick posting and fund processes. We want to stay in the quick postings area because what we are interested in doing is entering pledge cards. So as pledge cards are coming in for the fund, we want to be able to post those into the program. I'm going to go and click on pledge cards entry. Now the first thing that's going to show up is a list of any batches that haven't yet been completed. Okay? Now these could be your batches, these could be other users' batches. If a batch needs to be finished, this is where you would continue on those batches. But if you're adding a new batch for the first time, just go ahead and click on Add New Batch. Now, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to display options for us, and we want to make sure that the first thing we do is that we choose the proper fund that we're posting to. So in our case, we want to choose our Windows campaign. Now see how it's automatically putting some fields in for us. Okay, there's the date range for the fund. Automatically putting today's date for the batch date. The recurring charge is that window pledge. That's our charge activity. And the term of monthly or frequency, right, is going to be set to monthly. How do we want to post? We can post by name or post by ID envelope. Do we want to display the family information? Yeah, let's go and display that family ID and envelope if it's available to us. And how do we want to handle initial offerings? Now, you'll see here we have a checkbox to post initial offering, and we can choose the initial offering from the dropdown. Now, in my case here, we have an initial payment and we also have the payment option. So if it's an initial payment, we want to choose the initial payment option, just like that. Now, I want to stop here because there's also an option where you can post the payment at the same time that the pledge is coming in. And we want to decide, how do we want that payment to affect the rest of the pledge. So if you have families that want to be able to post, or they want to pay $100 and they're pledging $1,200 for a year. Okay, we'll use that example. If we want that, if they want that $100 to pay their first installment, and then the rest of the year, the equal payments be spread out to the rest of the year, then that can be entered as an additional payment, right? So we want to enter additional payments for that to happen. If we enter an initial offering, that has the effect of potentially changing the monthly rate that they have chosen. It can reduce the rate, the monthly rate from that point forward. And it can also have the effect of removing the last month due because they made an initial payment on the front end. So we have two different options, and I'm going to go ahead and leave those in there. All right, so let's go ahead and, looks like someone wants to come into the meeting, so let me go ahead and let her in. Okay, so you can kind of see what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and just recap where we are. Under initial offering, we chose the initial payment, the date of the payment. Now, this is just the default information. We can always choose it and change it for each family that we're when we're doing the line item entries. Up to the right, we can tell it to post as special if the initial offering matches the pledge. Now, what that means is if I'm plugging away and I post an initial offering of $100 and the family only pledged $100 and I enter all that into my fields, then this will automatically change. If I type, let's say I was about to type in monthly because that's what they chose on their pledge card, it will change it to special because technically we're not expecting any more payments from that family. Kind of like a one-time pledge. And the program will automatically correct that for us. We can tell it to post check numbers and to post comments. These are just available fields that will be ready for us. Reduce the total amount due by the amount of initial payment. And so I'm going to go ahead and keep that check so you can see what that looks like. The next field down is entry order. So you want to pause here, just take a look at your pledge card to make sure that you are putting the order of entry to match as best you can the order of the items on your pledge card. The default is total pledge, initial offering, and terms. All right, and then down below, we saw that we checked the additional payments option, but there are a couple other options where we can post member association, post e-giving account information, check numbers, comments, and fund keywords as well. So I'm going to go ahead and leave everything as is and click next. Okay, so see what it's doing is it's recognizing that today's date is outside of this date. Okay, do you want to continue? It's okay. You can go ahead and leave that date in there. I mean, typically what you're going to see is you're going to be posting using dates that are inside your date range of your fund, but it will allow you to post. I'm going to go and say, yes, I want to continue. All right, so here we are. Now, at this point, I'm working with my stack of pledge cards and I'm entering all the information about that on that pledge card. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a name. So start typing in last name first. So here I am. It found me and I just pressed the tab button and it displayed the rest of the information. Now at this time, If I'm noting that the family has crossed out their address and put a new address or new contact information, I can click Change Family Info and update whatever needs to be updated right here. Okay, just update it, click Save, and you're done. I'm going to go and just cancel here because there's nothing for me to change. Now, if the family had the fund already, it would be displayed right here. Okay? Now that should be a cue, a visual cue for you to see if it displays Fund 5, and we can see that the family still has a balance on Fund 5, then maybe posting a new pledge is not what needs to happen here. That payment should probably pay off the fund the term and rate, the pledge that's still open that hasn't been paid off. So that's why we provide that information for you. If they have the fund, it'll be right here. Moving on down, what's the total pledge? Okay, so I'm just going to keep it simple, $1,200. When I hit tab, it's going to take me to the billing period. So what's the billing period? And we're going to go ahead and do it for the entire 12 months. I'm going to hit tab. It takes me to the through date. Now, I have this through button where I can quickly choose from 1 week, 1 year, and the other options, whole current week, whole current month, whole current year, or even the fund period. The quick way to get that data entered, I'm just going to go and choose the 12 months. I'm going to hit tab, and now we've got the initial payment. Now, if I enter an initial payment of $100 and hit tab, see what happens if the program calculated my balance. I still want to put in a check number. There's the date. I'm going to keep hitting tab. I can also put in a comment. Keep hitting tab. And now at this point, I want to choose my terms. Now we have a number of different terms available to us. I just want to go ahead and choose the monthly. Okay. All right. So it's calculating everything for us so far. We've got our total pledge. Everything's been entered. Now at this point, what I can do is I can click on the special button, and that's going to display for me what the amounts how they're going to appear on the family's recap screen. Okay. So see what happened? I'm going to move this over. So that last payment for April dropped off. So that $100 initial payment affected the ending amount due. So they still owe for for May, but the last payment will not be due because they paid that. It's part of their initial payment. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, I'm going to hit cancel here. I'm going to take out this initial payment. Okay, let the program just kind of reset itself here. And instead of entering an initial payment, I can enter the payment down here under my additional payments group. Again, we'll go ahead and just put in today's date. Just apply today's date. I'm going to use the payment. Now, it can still be initial payment because we have that option available to us. And I'm going to put in $100 here. Okay. Now, when I click special, it's not going to display or take into account this $100 because I haven't posted it to the family yet. But I'm going to go ahead and keep that there, and I'm going to add another family. So we're finished with my record. Let's go ahead and add a new family. Now, the new family is going to be a non-parishioner. So I'm going to go ahead and just start typing in non. Okay, I'm going to press enter. Family not found. Do you want to add that family? Yes. Okay. Now, even though they're a non-parishioner, we still need to add their family record to the database because in PDS, the fund record is attached to the family record. So we still need to add them, but let me show you what you're going to want to do. So we'll click yes. Now, it's going to automatically take us to this view. Now, what this view represents is a list of families that have been archived. Now, archive means that I just can't see the family from my program and my program's church office. And then sometime in the past, this family may have been part of the church office and was deleted, but then the program prompted the user to, instead of deleting that family completely off the hard drive, to just hide it in the background. So that's what this list represents. It can also represent cases where if your church office program is sharing data with formation office, these could be formation families. Okay, so those two scenarios could occur. Now, you can see here we're looking for parishioner, non-parishioner Joe. I don't see Joe non-parishioner in my data. I've done my due diligence and I've checked. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click is add new family. There's no family to use. I'm going to click add new family. All right, so now that's going to bring up an add family dialog where I want to enter as much information that I have available to me from that pledge card into this screen. Okay, now it's a non-parishioner. So what I want to make sure that I'm doing first, I'm going all the way over here to non-parishioner. I'm going to put a checkbox on there. Okay, so that's going to be the flag that indicates to the church office program that this family is a non-parishioner. What that also means is that anytime I'm producing a report or an output, maybe an export, I may need to do a little bit extra to say I want to include non-parishioners in this report or in this mailing, because they're not included by default when we're trying to get data or information out of the program. So they technically didn't register, so I may not put a register date. Depending on how my status keyword looks, I might choose a proper keyword for family status. I'm going to go ahead and put in the address here. And if I have any other information about them, I can plug that in, like phone number, email. I might put a general remark. Okay. I might also put a keyword, family keyword. Okay. So just know that we can add as much information on the fly to families that are parishioners or non-parishioners, and this is what that process looks like. Okay, look down below, automatically add record for head and spouse. So based on the name that we put here, based on the breakdown where we would put in the spouse's information, we might choose to automatically add those individuals, and the program can do it based on the name breakdown screen. So we'll go ahead and keep that checked and then click Save Family. All right, so again, it's not recognizing that that family is in. If it did, we would see their information here. And then we can go ahead and continue to enter the little pledge and pay. So for this one, we're going to put in, let's put in, how about $120 for this one? No initial payment. So no check number, no additional payment down below. We can put in a comment if we want. They're going to be monthly as well with a rate of $10. Okay, pretty straightforward. Click on next. Now we have two. All right, so we're done. Let's go ahead and click next. Now the program is going to ask us, okay, what do we want to print as part of the batch process? A list of the information that was posted, print a full list with terms and rate. We can even print an abbreviated list with totals only. Let's go ahead and choose that one. We can even print thank you letters for those that are pledging or paying, as well as printing labels and envelopes. Okay. I'm going to uncheck the letters for now and click Finish so that we can see these two reports. Let's hit Preview. The first one's going to be the posting of the pledge cards. So here's our families, what they pledged, what the terms were, total amount. You can print this out. You can send it to your printer. You can click on Print and change print to a file and send it to an Adobe file if you want. Okay. I'm going to hit Close here. And here's the second report. Let's hit this one. This is that summary, which is the totals. Okay. I'm going to close that one. So we're done. We posted our pledges and one that had a payment with it. So let's go take a look to see what that looks like on the family screen. Under Information, we'll just go to Families first. Let's go pull up my record. And now I'm going to go to the Contributions view. And over on the right-hand side, here's my Fund 5, and here's my pledge. So up on top in this Term and Rate section is where the pledge lives. So we can see all the information about the pledge, the batch date, also the breakdown, the detail about the pledge is over here as well. And then down below, we can also see the payment. Okay. Now, if I go to the recap screen, now my program by default is recapping our totals through today's date. If I want to see the total recap for all dates, which is through the end of the family's billing period, we can click on Show Recap Grand Totals for all dates, and we can now see how they're doing as a whole. Okay. So we can choose the default, which defaults to today's date. We can even change this date to, what is it going to look like a month from now? Okay, click Apply, and this would be the recap through April or May 31st. So we have full control over that. On the right-hand side is where we can see the breakdown of the amounts. Now we call them due. Okay, so the amounts due and the amounts paid. Okay, so $100 was due in May, $100 paid in May. It's pretty straightforward. Let's go look at the non-parishioner. There he is. All right, so this is the fund screen because we were still on the contribution screen, but let's go ahead and go to the family screen first so we can see. There's his information, basic information that we had on the pledge card. So we can still fill out all the detail once we continue to communicate with them. Look over on the right-hand side, non-parishioners chat. Okay. Now, where that becomes useful is when we're trying to get information out. We can either include or exclude non-parishioners based on the report or output that we're looking to do. Okay, so now we've got two pledges set up, two families. Joe has pledged, but he hasn't paid anything. If we go to the contribution view, we can see he's got his term and rate, his pledge set up, but nothing's come in. So now the next step is to start posting payments as they're coming in. Now, you'll see if I go back to my processes and I go back to my contribution process, the payment donation entry process is right here in the top left corner. So we already did this. We want to go to payment donation. Go ahead and click on that. Now from here, very similar to our posting of pledges process where we have a setup screen, but now we're defining what we're going to be posting as far as payments go. We're going to go and choose the default of ID envelope, number, and name. What information are we going to be posting? So check numbers, comments. We can choose to print receipts. Down below, check the items to repeat. So this will help us as we're doing line items, not having to repeat the fund number, the date, fund year, the activity. Okay. Just be careful when you're doing these because you could receive payments coming in with different activities. You might need to just change the activity as you're doing that. But you just watch out for that. The checkboxes, Select the following checkbox if you want to, and then you have options to total the ID envelope numbers to give you a count. Automatically check for duplicate entries. Okay, keep that checked. That's going to help you in case you accidentally enter an item twice. And then down below, you can even export those totals to Ledger or QuickBooks. Okay, so you have those options as well. Okay, now down below, if we jump all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see active families only, inactive families only, or active and inactive. So if when you're doing your search, if you want to cast a smaller net to only find and locate your active families, go ahead and choose the active option. I'm going to keep mine as active, both active and inactive. Let's go ahead and click use OK. And now we're in that process. Okay, now from here, see how we have fund numbers? So go ahead and choose the fund number. It's 5. The fund year automatically comes in for us. I'm going to use my tab button to tab through the rest of the information. So you want to make sure that you're using the date that your payment was received for the actual payment posting date. That's my notification about that, that date. Do you want to stop showing this message? I'm going to say yes, I'm aware of that. So let's go ahead and keep today's date. Tab over. And notice that the window payment is the default activity. Okay? So that default activity of payment is always going to display for us as we're doing one line item at a time, unless we change it to something else. So let's keep that at window payment. All right, so let's go ahead and post. How about that non-parishioner? Let's go ahead and put them in. And that parishioner. I said I wasn't a really good speller. I mean that. I'm not finding it. Let's do an advanced search. Oh, there they are. Non-parishioner. I just spelled the name wrong. All right, so you click on advanced search, you find them. Now they were a previously looked up record, so I found them in the bottom list. Okay, so what are we posting? $10. It was cash, so I don't have to put in a date, but some folks like to do this and just put in cash. Okay. You can put in a comment. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on save. Now at this point, I could have entered 20, 50, 100 entries, and maybe I'm not done yet. Maybe there's a few more I need to finish, but it's lunchtime where I need to go home. What I can do is I can just click on finish later. I'm going to hit that. To resume posting, just look for this batch. Okay. Are you sure you want to finish later? Yes. Takes us out of the process. Next day, a week from now, I come back to it. It's going to be available to me right here. I can just now say use existing batch with the arrow pointing toward it, and I'm right back to where I was. So I can easily pick up where I left off. Okay. Now, as far as the other option, let me go ahead and let's click on the drop down, and I'm going to find a different family this time. Let's go ahead and post a payment to somebody that I know doesn't have the fund. How about Carl? He doesn't add it. You want to add it? Yes. So now I'm in the process of adding a payment, but there's no fund. There's no pledge attached to that payment. Now, I would know that because I don't have the fund set up. It's telling me there's no term and rate set up or anything about it. Now, at this point, if I clicked on rates keywords, okay, I can add a rate and keyword right here. Now, what I would be doing is just simply setting up the pledge outside of the pledge entry process, but I can do it from here. I'm going to show you what it looks like when we don't enter that information. So Carl here gave us $50. A check of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I'm going to click next. Actually, let's go ahead and just click check for duplicates real quick. No duplicates found. And now I'm going to click post. Are we sure? I'm going to click yes. Do you want to print? Yes. Okay. Now this version is going to give me a detailed list, and I can also print out a list for deposit information, hand that over to my accountant that's handling the accounting part of the entry. It's getting those incomes put in. I'm going to click print, and I'm going to click preview. So my first report is my payment summary. If I click next page, here's a breakdown of the summary payment type. So we've got for Fund 5 Windows campaign, and there's the total for those 2 payments. All right, average payment. I'm going to click on close, but I can print those if I want. Let's go ahead and hit the preview of your accounting summary. So we've got checks and cash. I'm going to close, and now we're done. Now at this point, let's go take a look at Able. Remember, Able didn't have a pledge, and we didn't choose to set it up. If I go to his record, he's in our drop-down, so I can easily choose him. Go to his contribution record, and go to Fund 5. Okay, so we got a payment, no term and rate. But watch this. If I take a look at his recap, I can still see a due and a paid. The due, this $50 due, was created because we told during the fund setup to calculate a pledge on every payment. So if Carl calls us up, we would be able to tell him, yeah, I see that we had 50 due, 50 paid, 0 balance. You're good. If we didn't have that option, or if we didn't check that option on the fund setup screen, we would see due 0, paid 50 with a negative 50 balance. And that could, that can throw you off when you're looking at the reports and the totals. So you just be careful when you're doing that. All right. Go back over to our document here. So talked about setting up the fund, entering pledges, non-parishioners, and initial payments. Now, what I want to just cover real quick, I know we're going a little bit over our time, but this shouldn't take more than a couple minutes, is to quickly talk about the other activity that we set up under the fund. So remember, we set up under administration when we were setting up the actual fund, we set up the non-cash. Yeah, the non-cash donation. Okay. So where that comes in is if, let's say, a set of tables was donated, just an example, that could be a non-cash donation. So the way that gets entered still gets entered through the quick posting process. You would just choose the activity of Windows non-cash. Now, as far as the dollar amount is concerned, the dollar amount or the value you would put in under the comment. You wouldn't actually give it a dollar value for that non-cash donation. You have to put that detail into the comments itself. So same way to post. You would just make sure that you're choosing the proper activity with a detailed description of what that item is. Okay. I know that we went over a few minutes. I'm going to take a look at the messaging section to see if there's any questions. I'm not seeing any questions. So just want to thank you all for joining me today and just taking that extra hour out of your day to go over the setting up of funds and working with those contributions. And if there's an opportunity for you all to meet up with me next week, we'll be here. All right, Christy, I'm going to give you just an opportunity if there's anything, any comments, anything you'd like to add before we wrap it up.
No, just thank you for joining us, everyone. Mike, thank you for your time today. And we will get that video to you as soon as it is processed, and I'll get the link for YouTube out to you for today.
Okay, and I will get that out to you, Christy, as soon as it's ready to go.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you joining me. Have a great rest of your week.